All right, Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to say that I just finished reading your book and I absolutely loved it. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
Well, I hear I have some fans over there at Book Baby, and thank you. And thank you for all your hard work on the project so far. It's great to be here, Joe.
Of course. And I wanted to kind of start by just diving right into your book. And one of the early lines that stood out to me is that you wrote that penning a memoir can feel like hugging a cactus. And I love this line. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about this and the process of writing this memoir and how it felt and what it was like for you.
I'm so thrilled you said that because that is one of my favorite lines in the book. That one just was everything to me. And you're looking at all the unsung parts of your life. You're looking at all the dirt on the wheel of how you got down the road. And oh my gosh, what was I thinking there in your life? And you go, wow, I'm a loser, like over and over again. Till you realize losing is exactly as good as winning.
Yeah.
There's no winning. It's losing. So what? Are you doing what you love to do?
Right.
And so, but it was painful to be in the face of my brother's suicide and struggling with some of the characters that I met in Hollywood.
Yeah, and I think when you write about this, what I love most about the book is how unapologetic and honest it was. Like you really didn't hide anything. And I think when you're writing a successful memoir, that's necessary. Like you have to be yourself. So I don't know if could you share a little bit about how important it is to be honest and even humorous in a memoir, even if it's challenging?
How important is it to be honest and humorous in a memoir? You hold an audience with humor so much easier than you do any other way. And I believe I go on to say that I find it cruel to write a memoir that isn't funny. I go to that extreme. I love Carrie Fisher. You know, I love Nora Ephron. I mean, there's these writers where, you know, you're saying something and it's horrible, or Whoopi Goldberg in her one woman show. And it's like in Whoopi's one woman show, it was a character where she had these long, luxurious golden locks with a mop on top of her head. And she's wishing she was a white girl with blonde hair. And then in the next scene, she's giving herself possibly, or knew someone who like was giving herself an abortion with a wire hanger. So you have all these extremes of emotions, and that's what the best kind of writing is. And that's why she won the award on Broadway for her show, Spook Show. But my point is that you got to embrace the dark with the light, or it just isn't, you got nothing. You don't have the highs and lows that are needed for comedy.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes comedy such a unique art, is that, you know, something that is filled with humor just has so much darkness to it too. And like I think comics are like some of the most creative minds in the entire, it's amazing.
Those are my heroes. They're my heroes. Robin Williams is in my book. I knew Robin. I hung out with him at the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard, and Andy Kaufman's wanted to wrestle me. I don't know, Joe, how current are these names to your generation though? Andy Kaufman, Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, I feel like is timeless.
Thank you.
Like he is absolutely timeless. I mean, same with Whoopi Goldberg, Andy Kaufman as well. I feel like the names you mentioned throughout your book can't be specifically dated to a certain time. Like I do feel like there's just, everyone knows them, knows how influential they are.
Well, let's see. Shall we talk about who's in the book? David Letterman, Andy Kaufman, Robin Williams, Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, William Shatner.
There are so many amazing people that you mentioned in your story. And I'd like to kind of go through your book for readers and prospective readers and talk about the story. And I want to go back to some of your early story, growing up in Kansas. And if you could talk about, you know, how growing up in Kansas, how you first fell in love with film and what made you want to pursue a career in that, growing up where you were.
I just was named after a movie called Laura, which is a classic film with Gene Tierney. And my mother was an usherette at the Paramount Theater in New York City. And I was told I was related to the Barrymores. So I had all these things. I'm 5 and 6 years old and I'm learning who's a Barrymore, or, even though I have no idea to this day whether I'm actually related, but you know, lots and lots of black and white movies with my mom, lots and lots of adoration of everything to do movie star, photoplay magazine, modern screen magazine. So here she was, this usherette in New York City, and she gave it all up and she moved to Kansas, and she lost touch with this whole imaginary world and inherited on her daughter, you know, and then all the magic started happening for me. Like my mother gave me some sort of like sparkle dust, and I was able to go out and get into that behind the curtain. I always
Yeah.
saw filmmaking and the actors like that Purple Rose of Cairo, and I wanted to be on this side of Dutyville, as Andy Kaufman would call it, right? I wanted to get inside the camera, and how ironic now I'd like to see this become a movie.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever feel though, like when you wanted that so badly, like, did you ever feel trapped, especially in high school? Like, I mean, I myself grew up in a small town, and like, I understand that daunting feeling of like wanting to get out. Did you ever feel
Yes.
trapped growing up?
Oh my God. Oh my gosh, Joe, I was crawling out of my skin to get out of Kansas. I mean, I say at one point, you know, it's best viewed in my rear view mirror. Like, no kidding. I mean, this is the linoleum of the plains. There's like too much red, too much Bible belt
Yeah,
thumping.
no, I love that.
You know, my mother's a New York City girl. She keeps saying, get out of here, get out of here, go to New York, go to New York. So I just know I got to get out of Kansas because my mother's told me to get out, and she's right. There's just a whole world waiting for me. And she kind of fueled me with all of her passion for the business. And my father was a big music lover. So there was always Broadway music playing. And
Mhm.
he was very creative with that too. When he went to Cornell, and his father's an amazing story who's in my book, who started out as a superintendent at Woolworth and became its vice president of real estate and hung out with Jack Kennedy. So we know for sure that now John Kennedy Jr. is in the book, right, Joe? We can't leave
Exactly.
that out.
Exactly. Well, you know, within the book, what I love about it is you do talk a lot about what you regret and like what bothers you about your life and your career and the industry. But what I think stands out is you never really let that become a reason to deter others from also pursuing their dreams. You always will push for readers to go after what they want, no matter the disadvantage. And so, like, I don't know, what is your message to those who find themselves in your shoes, who are pursuing a career in acting or in entertainment? Like, to them, what would your message be?
I hear it's even worse now.
Mhm.
So don't go become an actress in Hollywood, as exciting as it is to lose everything the way I did, and end up where I did. Yeah, you can't wait to do that, I bet, right? Uh, you know, no, I'm serious. You have to be willing to risk it all, but you can no longer be a young woman and go to Hollywood, ladies, without going with somebody or having a lot of money or having a pit bull, because they're trafficking women now.
Yeah.
They're trafficking women way worse than what happened to me, where they almost tried to hook me into being a prostitute. Now they're trapping them with human trafficking. So it's a message of extreme importance to any listeners that were thinking about that. Secondly, the more important, and another important point is, Joe, God, you know, yeah, there are the regrets and there are the traumas, and if you don't go for it though, you're living in a vacuum.
Yeah.
What's exciting you? What's passionate about it? What's getting you out of bed in the morning? You know, if you don't know, find out. What did you love as a child? What part of you has died off? And then you recklessly go for it, knowing there's a real good chance you're going to lose. You're
Yeah.
going to
And
freaking lose. Who cares? How does it feel to get out of bed in the morning?
yeah.
How does it feel? Like you did? Joe? Have you given up on a part of yourself with any regrets? That I could ask you now. What would it be? Would light you up right now that you're not doing?
Hmm. I think for me, my biggest, and this is interesting, not a lot of people ask me questions. I like this. You know, I think for
Mhm.
me, one of my biggest regrets is that I've never gone too far from home. I've lived in one state my entire life. I love Pennsylvania. I love it here. But I've never left. And I always have this adventurer spirit to like see different places and live in a different place. And I've never done it.
What astrology sign are you?
Libra.
So you're a Libra. Oh, very
Mhm.
perfect for you, Joe. We'll get into that later, but yeah, you need
Right.
to travel. Yeah, you need to get away from home. I mean, that is the one pill I would. You can do the red pill, the blue pill from the Matrix. I
Right.
would put this, I would put this pill in your hand and say, move away for a year or two. Absolutely. That is a no brainer. At least go off from where you've been living your whole life and do something for a while. You will come back. It will still be there, but that is the most eye-opening thing you can do for yourself
Yeah, I mean, and
because
you,
there's so much.
yeah, I definitely feel that. And I mean,
Yeah.
you moved to California, and by the time you're 22, you were performing with Whoopi Goldberg. Could you talk about this part of your young career and working with such an extraordinary talent?
Sure. So I saved up $500 from waitressing tables in Overland Park, Kansas, and then got to San Diego and pretty much met Whoopi Goldberg. I don't really know how that worked, but my whole life's been like that. Celebrities, run-ins. It's yes, I will name drop, and it will become annoying. It's I have to name drop because I'm like, do you believe kind of a thing? Like it's not in the book, Joe, but do you believe that I had a conversation with Woody Allen? Oh yeah, that is in the book. Anyway,
That's in the book, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, what's the question?
So just, I was just curious if you could, for those who haven't read your book yet, like talk about what it was like in such a young career working with
Oh,
Whoopi Goldberg, working with such an amazing talent.
well, you just stood back and let her work. I found myself in an improv troupe. I auditioned and I became an alternate player in a troupe called Spontaneous Combustion with Whoopi Goldberg. And Spontaneous Combustion was Whoopi and about 4 other players or 5 other players and myself as an alternate. And the other people didn't want me. And Whoopi goes, no, Whoopi was the one that stood up for me. And she said, no, let's keep her. And so we'd sit backstage a lot on crates and talk about life. And she was on food stamps and I was working waitressing and I was the first person she saw famous in Star Trek to the Wrath of Khan. She was sitting in the movie theater and her daughter went, Mommy, Mommy, isn't that girl from improv? And Whoopi later told me on the Broadway stage of her show, Spook Show, I was the first famous person she ever, like someone she knew who had become famous. I was her first. And I
Wow.
love that story. But it was pretty daunting. I just, especially her talent. Like I'm a good improv player, but she was so very good that you just support a woman like that. The characters, the voices, the imagination, the writing, the commitment. I mean, she was leagues ahead of me, loser again. But then moving, and then the early years of then getting the Star Trek role and getting my credits changed over from my Kansas university to a California university. You can do that. You can be 4 years into a degree and get bored and take all those credits with you and go to a state and take a year to get re-registered there. You're not stuck in the middle of wherever you are. It'll take a while, but and so that was part of that going on. And then I hurt my leg in the Lyceum Follies dancing when I first got to San Diego, my first big break. And I was in the front page of the San Diego Tribune getting measured in my outfit as a showgirl. It was an all family entertainment show called Lyceum Follies. And we saved the Lyceum Theater in downtown San Diego. It was built in 1925. Broke my leg. Then that had to heal. Then I met the centerfold. And then I was in Star Trek. And I was just on it for a wild horse on a ride. I got a quote in there from Chaka Khan about youth being like you're on a wild horse and you just ride it. Well, Joe, that was my life. And you can't live like that anymore. Those were the 80s. Those were the 70s,
Yeah.
It's like there
Well,
was a wild time for a while.
I do want to get into Star Trek, and I want to do that next. But before we do, you mentioned earlier like how you name drop so many amazing celebrities and so many people you work with and just so many stories. And I was just wondering if you could share with people who are readers or those who are watching, like, who do you think of the most iconic people you met made the most lasting impact on your career? And you can name multiple, just some cool stories, I would say.
I would say Jack Nicholson is right up there. I actually got to talk with him one-on-one about his career. And I said, what brought you to Hollywood? And he goes, oh, I came here to look at the celebrities. I never thought I'd be one. And he was sincere. And I said, Jack, what's your biggest challenge as an actor? He goes, if I'm working with someone and they're not my equal, then I can't do my work, and only coming from Jack, can you accept that remark, right? But I've always been a bit of a journalist and I'm always looking for the story. And I put myself in incidental situations to get the experience like Gloria Steinem did as a Playboy bunny. So you may have noticed in the book, Joe, I'm objectifying a lot, and I'm looking out from within sort of. Yeah.
It's so interesting how you talk about these movie stars, because when I read it, I understand they have this larger than life presence that like I can't imagine even. I feel like I would have a hard time even if I saw someone as
Heart
famous.
attack,
Yeah,
heart attack, heart
like
attack. I'm like having a heart attack. And I've had a lot of heart attack moments in Hollywood, you know. I really, really have. I mean, I ran into Ray Liotta at a crafts table at a GQ award show, the same show I met Ben Affleck at, who I went to say hello to and he ignored me. And then Julia Roberts walked over and said hello and he ignored her too. And then I felt better.
I
That
feel
happened.
like then.
That really did happen. Um, Ray Liotta was there too, and I almost bumped into him, and I had like, you know, some dip probably on my face or something. But you know, yeah, the Woody Allen. I was in a movie, Radio Days, as an extra. I probably did half a dozen films as an extra, and in Radio Days, I kept getting moved forward, move forward, move forward. So as in a movie, they always move me forward,
Mhm.
and Woody's right there. And I'm right here. And I was like, Woody Allen. And we have a mutual friend. And I go, hi, Woody, you have a friend, Michael Davis. Michael's in the book as well. Michael Davis is someone you wanted Woody to cast in The Purple Rose of Cairo. And now I'm talking to Woody Allen. I'm freaking out. He's my hero. Woody
Yeah.
Allen, right there, right next to me. I'm talking to Woody Allen. And he goes, oh, I know who that is. He goes, I wanted to cast Michael Davis in the role of the lead in The Purple Rose of Cairo. And he's such a good actor and juggler. And then Mia Farrow walks in and then he acts like he doesn't know me, but I was too old for him anyway. But stories like that, or getting in, I was in the airport with Rodney Dangerfield, even that story.
Yeah, that's one
It's
thing that I mean, I readers will just love that. Like there, it's crazy how many amazing stories you've had. It's like the stars are aligned for you. And it's I don't know. I couldn't get enough of it.
William Shatner, of course, the book William Shatner, you know,
Exactly.
who I did have that cool experience with, where we were friends, Captain
Well,
Kirk, and that's a part of the book.
well, so now I want to go into how the opportunity came up for you to be cast in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And what amazed me when I was reading your book is how quickly the audition was for you to be cast. Like how Nicholas Meyer just kind of looked over you, and it seemed as if the part was yours. Could you just talk about how this opportunity came up and what the process was like to be cast in that film?
Sure. So there was a magazine called Drama Log, and it posted in the classified section in the back any parts that were going to be coming up that week in LA. So I always read Drama Log when I was in between waitressing tables and trying to sleep and survive, hope and a prayer that an ad would show up that would be right. Most of them weren't. And so literally I had to commit myself to a year and a half of looking at this paper, maybe less, you know, and till there was a big giant ad, and it was me. It was me to a T. It was my measurements. It was my height. It was my coloring. So I called Central Casting and they said, come on down. And they looked at me. They were desperate to cast it, Joe, because Lana Clarkson, who's in the book, starstruck, was murdered by Phil Spector. So she was supposed to play the role. So my role had already been cast by a woman who had been starring in films, and they were intending to use Lana as the navigator. She'd already gotten a bump up from an extra. So I was stepping in and fit her. And we had been auditioning for movies together, Lana and I. So I knew
Yeah.
Lana. And the process was extraordinary to get to Paramount and have my name at the gate, you know, walking into this lot. And my mother worked at Paramount movie theaters in New York City as an usherette, and now I'm on the Paramount lot. I love that connection.
Yeah.
But you're never okay. You're always freaking out. I read Penelope Cruz some quote recently where she said, yes, she's always freaking out in a movie set. It's too cool. There's too much to lose. You're like in the in crowd. You want to stay there. You think you're in the way. Why am I here? I'm going to get discovered. You know, the whole imposter syndrome. And then even going on to star in other films and other things I've done where I had a TV series on Sci-Fi. I always think I should have been doing something else, or I should have done it better, or I'm not doing it right. So I always have that inner critic. And this book is my legacy to myself and to everyone. Just stop. It's what William Shatner said recently. If he'd known none of this mattered, he would have done his whole life differently.
Yeah.
Really, when you get older, you realize it doesn't matter. Just go for your dreams.
Yeah. And well, I think what amazed me too is that you also had no idea what film that you were auditioning for, like that they
Oh,
didn't
yes,
post.
back to the story.
Also, I was like it's just like the unknowns. Like I can't imagine what it was like.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
you don't
so
know
I
what you're
get the
getting
yes from
into.
Central Casting. I quit my day job and I go over to Paramount. My name's at the gate. I walk in, they walk me into Nick Meyer, into Hangar 9, where all the magic for Star Trek happened on a number of films. I'm on my first movie set. Everything's enormous. These hangars are enormous. I had to park my car like Universal Studios Orlando, but this is the real Universal Studios. And in Goofyville, I was parking so far away. That's what they say. You parked in Goofy in Florida. If you parked too far from where you're going, you've parked in Goofy. Well, I was in Goofy and my heart's pounding out of my chest, and they have these giant doors open up and bells are going off and on for when they're shooting and when they're not. So you know when to walk in. And he looked at me and he said yes. And then I went to wardrobe and I got fitted and I went back the next day. They said I'd have to quit my job because it was going to be 30 days of work. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I
Right.
didn't know where I was going to land on the end of that, though. I had no idea with money, no idea. It was falling within a net, a free fall.
Well, and then you're on the set, and I think you you share so many amazing details of like what it's really like to work on set of a major motion picture. And I think that's something that obviously, like, unless you've done it, like myself, I have no idea. And it was fascinating to learn about. And I know that there's a lot for you to choose from, but I was wondering if you could share one or two of your best memories on set, just working on a set of that magnitude.
Thank you, Joan. I really get that you get my book, and I'm really digging you right now. Um,
Thank you. I
uh,
appreciate it. I'm a note taker.
movie.
When I read, I'll underline. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I'm going to treasure this interview. I can already tell you, but movie making and movie magic to me is just so extraordinary. I love the story of Walt Disney. If you haven't seen that, the documentary on his life is just brilliant. I love magic. I love art. I love how cinema and art and color and design and shape and language all come together in filmmaking, and produced my own film, Manhattan Dating Project, which is on my IMDb page. Uh, and motion pictures, just Stuntman, Peter O'Toole, a great movie about movies inside movies. I like movies inside about movies, like The Player, and the whole fascination with Hollywood. And I think this book's going to do well because my PR firm is saying that Hollywood loves anything about Hollywood. They're so narcissistic, right? And
Right.
so, yeah.
Well, and then did you know all along that you were going to be chosen to pilot as soon as you were cast, pilot the role?
No, that was a surprise.
So what was it like to be chosen for that role? Because that was kind of obviously life-changing.
Well, there was a whole bunch of extras when it started, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And every day they'd say, if you don't hear your name, please stay. The rest of you, you can go. And then they'd leave. There's like 20 extras to begin with, and everyone kept getting sent home and sent home and sent home and sent home. And me and Nancy Rogers and a handful of guys haven't been sent home. And we're going, no, but this has got to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, this has got to be good. They're really working us here. And sure enough, then Nancy and I are on the bridge, and it was like, wow. And now I know what I'm making. And Joel Gray's visiting the set. If you don't know who he is, he's a total cool cabaret guy, Joel Gray. And I was excited. It was exciting. Movies that the energy, there's a different smell. The hangars are so huge. The camera operation, the lights, the way they roll sound, and the big bells go off, and the set with the craft surfaces and the little bungalows and the little bicycles. I don't know that there's any more magical place on earth in my mind than a movie set. And I
Yeah.
think La La Land captured that very well.
No, I agree. You really do share that like true movie magic. And when you go into the filming process, which really amazed me, and you mentioned that like you were a part of movie history in some of these iconic scenes. So what is it like to look back on some of these moments of filming these battle scenes? Like how intense was it? Like I can't imagine even being in that situation, and not many can. So if you could share, I think people would be really interested.
Okay, so you're making an action picture, which is all I make: action, adventure, action, horror, action, comedy, Star Trek action, sci-fi. It's always intense. It's most intense when stunt people show up. So we're actors, we can play intense. So most part, nobody's stressing out. I'm nervous because it's my first time on a movie set ever. But for the most part, movie making is about a lot of really rich people making more money.
Right.
So everyone's pretty comfortable, with what they're up to. They're loving life. They're getting paid to like have fun and make movies. So, but when you're going to shoot a scene and there's fire coming, then the fire marshal shows up, and actually the stunt people start praying. They form a prayer circle. I mean, think about it, wouldn't you? So a lot of quiet, a lot of sequestering. So the ship was blown up, and I have a stunt double. I've died 3 times in 3 different movies, Joe.
I do love that, those parts of your book, talking about your film deaths.
Yeah, I have like 4 cinematic lives to go. So yeah, but it's intense, and we couldn't figure out where to look at the Enterprise. So they're filming the shot, and we're all looking in different places, like. And then Nick goes, cut, and then he goes and he puts a piece of Scotch tape up there, and they go, all right, look at the Scotch tape, and then the scene worked, or spray. I was regularly sprayed down with fire repellent.
Oh my God. Well, it's interesting for you because obviously you had your line taken away, and which I was like, why would they do that? But like you were I feel like without starring in the film and like losing your line, your face is like synonymous with some of the most iconic moments and scenes and even photos from the film. So do you ever feel like Star Trek and the Reliant is part of your identity? Like, do you feel connected to the film in any way? And I'll show, once this is live, I'll show some of those iconic photos. I'll put them into this video, but do you feel a connection to the film?
Well, since I'm still friends to this day to William Shatner, and I had a really great time with him as his girlfriend for 4 months, I certainly have a connection of joy and thinking back how much fun that was, and that all was real positive experience. And it's hard to write about something like that because you could look at it and go, well, he was so much older than her and what was going on, but I'm making a statement. Did I make the right choice dating him? I don't know. Did I make the wrong choice? I don't know. But life's like that. You just do what you do, right? And so, there's certainly warmth in my heart for him. And, he just got me a table at the Star Trek convention and did my podcast and things. And the identity of who I was shaped a lot by this break, because the other film roles I got was because of that. And I think from that, I got confidence to do other things and get my TV series on Sci-Fi. And then Bill put me in TJ Hooker, and then I went on to do stand up, and then the improv all the years, many years in New York City, which will be the next book about my years in New York City. Oh my God, you don't know about my next years in New York City. It's I wouldn't say it's as amazing as California, but I am hanging out with Leonard Bernstein, Lauren Bacall, Ted Danson, Kirstie Alley. These are my friends in New York City, because I'm with a famous doctor, and my work in comedy clubs, and I'm in the comedy clubs. And so you have to keep reinventing yourself. And you don't know what it's up to, what's it like identity wise. It shaped me. I got that role in my early 20s, Joe. It absolutely shaped me. Being that I am a synonymous face with the film is an honor, and you can buy my pictures. Yeah. In fact, I'll be at GalaxyCon December 2nd to 4th in Columbus, Ohio, signing autographs.
Oh, really? There you go. For those who are looking,
I should hold up one of my autographed pictures. But anyway, yeah.
And one thing I'm actually kind of curious about a quote late in your book. You mentioned that sometimes I feel like a female Forrest Gump, intuitively going through life. What exactly do you mean by this? If you want to elaborate.
I'm so glad you're asking, because my agent was thinking maybe that whole quote may be escaping a generation younger. Did you know who Forrest Gump is?
Of course.
Of course. So I agree with you. What was I thinking? Of course you know. It's just all these crazy run-ins with celebrities that started when I was 15 years old back in Kansas City, meeting Anthony Newley, who's this famous British comic, as his waitress. Yeah. I mean, and then Robert Goulet in Vegas kissed my forehead. Forrest Gump kept running into celebrities, and he sort of became one, but he was always more of an add-in, like Purple Rose of Cairo, like stunt man, like, these movies that you're still looking in my book, I'm still looking in at Hollywood. I'm not in it, but I'm
Right.
separate from it. And so that's what makes it interesting. Interesting. I never put it that way before, but yeah.
Well, going off that theme of you kind of looking in from the outside, one
Yeah.
thing I noticed that you touch on a lot, and that kind of bothered me a bit, was that I felt just frustrated for you, is that there's so many times where you just were not acknowledged for your work throughout your career, which I was like, man, this sucks. I would be so upset. So what was that like? How frustrating was it? And like, how do you have any advice for others to like who find themselves not getting acknowledged for their work, and like how difficult is it to not hold a grudge? Just this whole concept of not getting, not getting the credit you deserve. I feel like that happens so much to you.
Well, so let's break down some of the ontology, which is the study of being human, in that question. I've done a lot of work on myself because of my dysfunctional childhood. I had to take a lot of courses and reprogram my head, and that meant workshops and books. And one thing I've learned a lot about in these mind sciences and in these courses I've taken is you have to forgive,
Mhm.
because if you do not, it overrides everything else in your life. And so, like chocolate and vanilla, you just have to choose forgive, don't forgive, forgive, because that frees you. And that's what I'm doing with this book. I'm forgiving, I'm freeing, but with an edge. I'm still a little pissed.
It's a
It's
little
not like I don't
extra.
still blame my mother for everything, even though I know that's ridiculous. It's still all my mother's fault. Uh, Satchel Paige is a famous baseball player, and he struck out more than any other player. But guess what? He also had the most runs batted in his lifetime. So you've got to be willing to fail. And again, beautiful question, because it leads back to my earlier point, which is it's in the losing that you really win. It's how often can you fail?
Yeah.
Like this book could come out and it could just go nowhere. And my co-author didn't want to do another book because she wants to go out on top. When we had our bestseller, which sold 250,000 copies, breaking the rules. I'm risking on a number of levels with this book. But if I don't, then what do I have? And why aren't you risking everything?
Yeah. No, I think that's the most big picture with all of your amazing stories and your history. Just that message, I think, carries so much weight for readers. And I think it's part of the reason why people will love your book. And it's one of the reasons why I loved it. So I
But
think that's
colorful
really
stories about even like Joe, when I was in the Philippines starring in action pictures in the jungles. I
I
mean,
loved your Wheels of Fire. It was Wheels of Fire was the
Wheels
movie?
of Fire.
Wheels of Fire. I loved, like, you literally were getting shot at by real bullets. I was like, what is happening? This is crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, like there's just so much,
Yes.
I don't know, filming and like your stories of filming overseas. I was like, this seems like so scary. Like, I don't know
So
how,
scary. Oh my
no.
God, so scary. So
Yeah,
scary.
I know. Do you ever get people who talk to you about that film, or not really?
Not really.
Not
I've been
really.
in retirement though, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Heck, I don't know. There's much to talk about. It's a horrible, horrible film. And it's great for comedy. It's like I
Yeah.
made Wheels of Fire, not to be confused with Streets of Fire, Chariots of Fire, House of Fire, and Howard the Duck. I mean, I was eaten by a monster. I was sucked into the ground by little people.
Yeah.
I jumped off a fire bridge. I was rolled down a hill and grabbed and kissed at the bottom. I've been
Right.
blown up in spaceships. It's like, that's fun. That's fun stuff. And the story for the show is the series is this actress in Hollywood who's also an extra to make the money work. And she's a B film actress. And that's the TV series, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. I there's just um, so much to learn from the book. And I actually have a couple, not necessarily content related questions, but just some author related questions, because I know a lot of people who will watch this are also authors. And I was just curious, like what the writing process was like for you. How long did it necessarily take you to write this book? If you could just share your writing process with those who are, I don't know, maybe in a similar boat looking to write a memoir.
Well, I started off and on, wanted to do the book about 20 years ago. So I didn't heed the call a long, long time ago. I wish I had. I've been burying it in my head for a long time. And then the 40th anniversary of the making of the Wrath of Khan happened, and I decided it was the year to write the book because I've been invited to a couple of conferences, a big one in Las Vegas where I was on stage with Ricardo Montalban's son-in-law, Gil Smith, and did a big, beautiful tribute to Ricardo Montalban. And that was really nice. It was time to write the book, and yet I regret that I hadn't started it sooner. I had notes, random notes that I'd kept, probably had written in the last 5 years, kind of an outline for my one-woman show or for my documentary, Manhattan Dating Project. I have a lot of creative, my 3 other books, and how does this message move the book movement forward? It is a woman's empowerment. My point of my books is a woman's empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's women's empowerment in the process and loving it no matter what happens.
Was it, so I know in the past you've traditionally published. What made you decide to self-publish as opposed to go the traditionally publishing route? Was it more challenging, easier? Anything that stood out to you with that?
Wait a minute, I just want to make sure I'm through on the writing process. So there was all of that waiting to do it. And then my writing process right now is I put on bossa nova music usually in the background. And I have an office that I made out of a closet in my bedroom here in Tampa, Florida, and it works really great. Just find your cubby hole, and then I become obsessed. I just stop. I like 6, 5, 10 hours a day. I'll just write, and then I'll write 2 hours a day, or I'll take a break for 2 days. Like I can go at it pretty strong. I wrote this book in 6 months. So I can go at it pretty strong, but I listen to my own rhythms where if I'm tired or the work isn't showing up to be sparkling, then I need a couple of days off.
Yeah.
I hate to reread it too fast. I wait a long time to reread. I reread in chunks. I like essay format because I can control it. It's what I used in Embracing Your Big Fat Ass and Breaking the Rules, and what David Sedaris maybe used to do. I don't know. But short essays are containable for me. I'm an impressionist. If I compare myself to an artist, I'd be like Henry Rousseau, who was primitive. My work has a primitivity to it. It's not, I don't know, but it's funny, I hope, and that's really what I want. So yeah,
well, it's so interesting to hear how different people go about the writing process. Everyone is so different. Like I'm kind of the same way. I haven't written anything super formal yet, but when I do write, I try to bang it out in bulk. And sometimes especially like how you are writing about some vulnerable things, like sometimes you're just not in a headspace to write. Like it could just be
having to reread it over and over again too. Tons and tons of edits, way too many edits, but it had to be right. Tons of edits. You just don't want to deal with half of the message. It's just discipline. It's just feeling the fear or feeling the discomfort and doing it anyway. That's a great quote. Feel the fear and do it anyway. By Susan Berkeley. Great book. Changed my life, that book.
Interesting. I'll check it out. And so how, like before, how was the process self-publishing compared to traditional publishing? Was it more challenging, easier?
Probably more challenging. I learned a lot about formatting and things I didn't know about. I'm still learning. I'm glad I did it from that perspective. Being published. Suddenly the top of my head looks flat. I have to fix my hair. Being published is much easier because they just hand you a check.
Yeah.
When there was a bidding war over Embracing Your Big Fat Ass and Owner's Manual, and Warner's, Ballantine, and Atria wanted the book. So we were taking fancy meetings in New York City and sitting at big tables. And we finally went with Atria. And it was very exciting, but they keep a lot of the money. And then we had troubles with editors that kept getting changed. And then our release was a horrible time with the Olympics and Barack Obama being elected, and the economy in 2008. So sometimes you can't control the release of a book date, and it's just bad. Yeah. That kind of happened with Embracing Your Big Fat Ass. But that got up to William Morris for a TV deal. And Breaking the Rules was with Endeavor, which is Ari Emanuel, who now runs William Morris, was my agent. And if you ever saw the TV show Entourage, did you ever see Entourage?
I have seen.
Ari?
Yep.
My agent.
Really?
Yes.
Small world. I hear your agent in Entourage is amazing. Well, the one nice thing with with self-publishing this book, I feel like this is your story to tell, and it's, you know, you don't have any other factors really controlling that, especially with something as vulnerable as a memoir. I'm glad that you were able to, despite the formatting challenges, get it out there. And like I said, it's your story, no one else's. And I think that's,
I mean, how funny it is that I was in college in a rock band and our name was Spider and the Crabs because they ran out of flyers.
right.
So we got the name of the band from the night before.
That's amazing. Yes. Have you heard any feedback from readers yet, or has it just been so early with the book that, you
No,
know?
everybody, I'm really getting a lot of love it, love it, love it. One lady was like, "I'm so sorry that happened to you." I'm like, "What happened? What happened to me? I dodged the bad bullets. I
Yeah.
dodged the bad bullets. You know, I knew Hollywood had a seedy side. And did I go out with William Shatner? Yes, and that wasn't seedy. It was great. Jack Nicholson pursued me. Warren Beatty pursued me. Did I go out with them? Well, you'd have to read the book. You know, my Playgirl Centerfold boyfriend is a silly story.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil too many of them because I want people to read the book, and I do want to say that it was, to me, one of the most just vulnerable and touching memoirs I've read, and I loved it. I recommend it to everyone. I really thank you for your time, Laura. I don't really have anything else for you. If you have anything else you'd like to share,
I
yourself.
am an astrologer and I do readings. So if anybody wants a reading, go to stargalnetwork.com. I'm really good. I'm actually an astrologer, and that's a way I can connect with people. So my next book's going to be about astrology. And other than that, I'm just thinking if there's anything else that I want to say to everybody. Thank you so much, Joe. Just saying what you just said means the world to me. And I really am so glad it feels vulnerable. And my life is a mess and it's wonderful all at the same time. You know, it really is. It's a big hot mess. And that's comedy. You know, it's like if you can see the ridiculousness of it. You know, Robert Williams, rest in peace.
Yeah,
Because I love the man. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, and thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate it. Make sure you purchase Laura's book wherever you buy books. And Laura, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a great interview. Thank you so much.